Every day, every day, every day, every day. I don't know everybody, everybody. What's going on, y'all? What's going on? Beautiful rising. We're going over this. We're reacting today. We'll be reacting to this video. It was a vibe, kind of like sit down talk, but the discussion was what is being taught to our children. I did a reaction to a clip on Instagram, if I'm not mistaken, and it turned out to do pretty well. So decided to find the full video because I hadn't seen the full video. So like I said, this will be a fresh reaction. Still trying to get used to this live etiquette. I do a lot of weird things. So I just wanted to get into it, hop on here, see how my view is looking. I can't. I'm gonna have to play around with this. Let me see, because I low key wanna zoom in a little bit, but no biggie. So what's going on, beautiful people? You know, this is Jay. I'll go by Jay Spivey. Let's just keep it simple. You know, how we feeling today? How we doing? Working on your goals? You healing? Yeah. All right. So, like I said, let's get into this video. I already got it pulled up. So, it's literally already. Bam. All right. So let's get into it. So at the beginning, it starts off really fast. It starts off with an African American man speaking. That's just the context. So I have to let you know that this is literally how the video starts. Yeah. So it's getting good.
The privilege discussion, like that's a great conversation for you to have with your child. But I don't think.
1 minute. Forgot my headphones. It was on my homie shoulder. I be forgetting I gotta put these bad boys in because of the video. So yeah, but I got my blunt ready, and you know we ready to react to some stuff. Let's see if I can get this over my head. All right, we ready? We ready? Am I still good? Am I still good? Am I still good? Okay. Let's see how this is gonna go.
I think that taxpayer-funded hatred should be something that we allow in our schools.
Okay, bro, real talk though, like brother to brother. Teaching white privilege does not inherently mean Black people are less. Factually incorrect.
Okay, I'm so glad that's not how it started. Like I said, this is my first. Give me a minute, bruh. I'm doing all of this and I'm missing a very important item. I'm walking around cleaning up the house. I did some cleaning. Did some cleaning right before, had to cleanse the space. But yeah, I'm glad that's not how it started because that was kind of awkward. Like that was the teaser. You know how they normally put at the beginning of the episodes. So yeah. Let's see what's going on here.
SATs.
No, wait. Gotta be careful.
I'm Mina Durson. I'm a correspondent here at Vice News, and we're going to talk about education today. We tried to bring a very diverse mix of voices here. Obviously, we're not going to be able to represent every single opinion out there when it comes to education, but we are really thankful for your time and for your perspectives. I also have 2 kids in school, so have experienced some of this from the parent side as well. So let's just start really broadly. What's the purpose of education?
I think the purpose of education is twofold. One, to help build and support the individual, but also help build and support society as a whole. Because even though you may not have a kid in education, you pay taxes to public school because we as a society depend on and need education for society to work.
I think the purpose of education is to educate and not indoctrinate. And I think that in a lot of ways we've strayed from that in the original purpose of what it's supposed to be.
I think it should be intelligence and character. I think you should be able to understand the world around you and understand who you are and your purpose and try to make the world a better place. I think that it has to be a mix of the skills, memorizing the formulas, understanding the world around you, but then also what to do with it.
And just to go off that, the idea that education, you have to balance the importance of memorizing the quadratic formula while simultaneously addressing social and political issues respectively. So children have both the know-how, general knowledge, and also kind of self-awareness and character so they're able to develop their own opinions.
Yeah, I think that the purpose of education is to understand the world that you exist in and use that understanding as a means for creating change or even understanding yourself on a deeper level.
I believe the purpose is simply just to prepare the individual to be successful in the society that they exist in.
Critical thinking, learn how to live out your full potential so you can be independent, and everything else really flows from there.
The purpose of education is to prepare children for the real life and also make sure that they are literate.
So I think the purpose is to raise the next generation of leaders. And when you think about what you want your leaders to be like, you want them to be knowledgeable and you want them to be compassionate. You want them to be self-aware. You want them to understand the best way to move forward, not just for themselves personally, but for their whole community.
When we talk about who's doing the educating, who should decide what's being taught?
Parents. I think that parents should have a huge say in what's going on in the classroom because it's their kids, not ours. As a public school teacher of 15 years, I was always aware that these are not my children. We have to make sure that we're respecting parents and their beliefs and their values.
Boom. Because yes, everybody's parenting is different. We all know that there's certain things that we don't want our kid to learn or understand. We want to teach them that. But again, society made school into this daycare and doing very poorly at it. Yeah, I would say there's good school systems and better neighborhoods. When I realized that with my baby brother. So when it came to my kids, I was always like, okay, I want to be on this end of town so I can get the better education from the better teachers, from the better students, maybe all the students aren't better, because it's not always like that, but it's the structure, it's the teachers. And when the teachers got their head on right, everybody got their head on right. Most of the time.
I think the Constitution agrees with that.
Yes.
Here in America, ranging back to the early 1900s, plenty of Supreme Court cases have ruled.
When teachers have support, I say when they got their head on straight. They got to have their head on straight and they have to have support. Where are they getting their support from? It's a lot of teachers quitting. That's what this talk was really going to be about. It's a lot of teachers quitting. And this was one of those topics, like every it didn't matter what color you were, people was going ham on this because it's about parenting, it's about raising your kids. It's always somebody that don't have no kids that has an opinion. Like I'm telling you, there's a lot of things that are going to change once you have a kid and what you want them to be exposed to. Money talks. I had to realize that money talks when it comes to that. What you can keep your kids away from, it can be circled around how stable you are as a parent. That kind of thing. That could have ruffled some feathers, maybe. Yeah.
In that favor that it is the parents' right ultimately to decide a child's education, medical needs, etc.
I would push back though and say that there does need to be collaboration, right? I completely respect your idea of it is not our job as educators to put forth a belief in front of children, right? That includes not perpetuating parents' beliefs in the classroom as well. In my opinion, that would be keeping a non-biased viewpoint, simply presenting issues and then allowing kids to decide for themselves.
I would agree that I think it needs to be a collaborative effort. The way that we decide curriculum in Texas is that work groups comprised of community members, educators, parents.
That's how it's supposed to be. Oh, side note. The better school systems definitely have support of the families in the area, in means of showing up to PTA meetings. I remember when those were a big thing. I remember when the PTA meetings were a big thing. I remember seeing the letters even as a kid. I remember reading them, you know, but the community never really supported. And I know other counterparts, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I have to explain this. I don't really care for color. I grew up in a very diverse world. My little world was very diverse. I have family of all colors. So when I say something, it's not like I'm trying to be straight up fucking offensive. All right. This is a discussion. I'm just trying to have a intelligent conversation, in helping better further the education of our children and removing them from the toxic environments that some of our children see themselves in every day. All right. So yeah, I know white people are showing up to the PTA meetings. I know maybe Asian descent are showing up to the PTA meetings. I feel like in certain areas, poor areas, quote unquote the hood, these families have less time to be popping up on their kid and to be showing up at PTA meetings at 6 p.m. trying to, talk about what's going on with the school. Most parents would just say they don't have time for things like that.
Even in some cases, students and public service officials come together to draft curriculum plans, and then it's ultimately decided on by our State Board of Education, which has a lot of kind of assistance from parents as well. So I think that kind of format can be really effective because it also empowers students to become involved in the fate of their education. And as a student myself, I think that that's incredibly important because our perspectives need to be heard as well.
The voices of parents need to be heard in that equation. But unfortunately, what we've seen recently is that parents' voices have been demonized in this process. You've seen parents who have criticized local school boards labeled terrorists simply for caring about the quality of their education that their child is receiving. These teachers are temporary.
I have to say, I relocated. I won't say where. If you know me, you know. If you know me, you know. But the school system here, my gosh, like, I'm still getting myself together, but I told my daughter, like we're like this close from homeschooling or private schooling, and even in this area, private schooling is not really going to be a thing. I was already told that by a lovely non-indigenous woman. She was explaining to me, without attitude, without aggression, she was just letting me know that the diversity that I might be looking for, I'm not gonna find. And I was letting her know it's not about diversity, it's about structure. But again, in some of these areas, you got to realize what you're dealing with, and sometimes the fight is bigger than what you can handle for yourself. So sometimes it is best to put yourself in a position to be able to remove your children from some of these situations because they're dying. Like teachers quitting, subs not knowing how to handle the kids. Even that I'm saying, even my kid joining in on, you know how it is, like the whole classroom being bad. So you think I'm not going to be the square. You just got to remove our kids from a lot of this BS.
Temporary caretakers. When they come back home, it's the parent who has to explain that this is this radical belief that was put in front of you. This was this idea that you've never been raised around that parent now has to explain. And at the end of the day, that isn't just confined to a classroom. Now it's bleeding into their upbringing. And there's only one person responsible for their upbringing, and it's the parents. It's not the educator, it's not the teacher, it's their parents.
I like the idea of the collaboration, and obviously parents' voices belong at that table. I also like the emphasis on students having a say in this, and also other people adults that aren't parents. I'm invested in that too, even though I don't have children of my own. And I hear what you're saying about having to, like, parents needing to confront or address, I guess, like what kids are learning at school. But giving kids the exposure to other ideas or other things that they wouldn't be exposed to otherwise is, I think, part of what's going to help raise the next generation of people that are able to look outside their own lived experience.
But I think that oftentimes those different ideas are presented in the classroom as a student as the only idea. When you're being taught that, oh, there's this many genders or anything like this, where you haven't been exposed to that in your own household, it's being presented as like the end all be all when it actually isn't. It's about
Okay, he went super direct with that comment. It's about to start getting juicy. He went direct with that comment. But he's right. He's right.
educating and not indoctrinating. As long as that is presented as a counterpoint to, well, there's people who believe this, but there's also people who believe this, that's okay. The reality of it is that in most classrooms across the country, that isn't what's happening.
And to piggyback off of that, one side is labeled as a bigot, white supremacist, homophobic. There's a lot of parents in America that are Christian, or, you know, they believe in two genders, gender binary. And if you say that as a teacher, especially, you could be labeled as homophobic.
Man,
so
speaking your truth. God is good. God is good. Speak your truth. Speak your truth. Speak your truth. But don't be disrespectful about it. Shout out to all the homies, whatever you are. You know I don't care. You know I don't care. But damn. Shout out to the ones that understand this, because it's like you can't be pushing your lifestyle on other people's kids. And teachers have been doing that overboard. And luckily we have a lot of good teachers, but all the good teachers is quitting. Cause y'all badass kids is putting y'all hands on the teachers. Disrespectful to the teachers. Don't know no type of authority. I could tell. That's when, like, you could tell whose daddies be opening up their mouth or actually disciplining their kids or actually there. Not always. Y'all know how y'all daughters get. You know, daughters, they get disrespectful. Yeah, man. Shout out to the moms with girls. Woo.
So there isn't this unbiased classroom, because there's one side that can't really be, as loud as the other side without risk of, losing our jobs even.
But you two are kind of the ones that brought in the conflict of, like, there is an indoctrination going on and only one side it has this opinion and this side is not allowed to talk and we have to be quiet. When really you guys are actually the loudest in regards to this issue thus far, right?
Now, yes,
so,
in
yeah,
this
so,
room,
so I
yes.
wouldn't necessarily say that that's the quiet. What I would say though is, like, I do want to push away, if possible, but I'd love for you to hear this, right? Is that idea of someone sees me and they go, oh, you're one of those that teach that there's 72 different types of gender. Desmond Fambrini, he, him, gender fluid, bisexual. My students do not know this because it doesn't come up, because I'm a learning specialist and it's my job to educate and teach a curriculum, right? Now, if I'm asked directly by a parent or if there's confusion, oh, why do you wear makeup? Same reason why girls do, because it's fun for me. It doesn't need to be this very controversial, I'm going to mess with this child's upbringing. They're going to go home and they're going to turn into a gender fluid and they're going to think there's 72 genders.
I think that's a question you say you should go ask your parents about how they feel about that.
Well, so,
And
okay.
teachers are supposed to teach reading, math, science, the things that are actually going to make them contributors to society.
Hey, shout out to dude. I mean, that's what he goes by. I forgot what he said. He said that so fast. I really didn't catch it. I ain't gonna front you. He said it so fast, but shout out to him. He explained that extremely well. Nothing against him. He explained that extremely well. Kudos to him. And he, like I said, to me, he answered it correctly. To some, he may not have answered it correctly, but he broke that down real smooth. So I understood it. That's what I'm saying. Like, these shells that we have, people judge them so much. You know what I mean? Like, but that's why I say it's being able to speak your truth and being able to stand on it and not be hurt by some of the comments you might receive. They was talking about Prince for a cool minute. Prince was getting but he dressed like what? It's just in people's judgment. I mean, if you going off of the Bible and whatnot, that don't say I grew up Christian. I shall not judge.
Answering a child's questions about whether or not men or women should be wearing makeup or not is, I don't think, within that realm.
Okay, so you said science, right? So we're talking about a physical science, we're talking about human anatomy and biology here. So a child says, I thought boys could not wear makeup. I have an X and Y chromosome and I'm wearing makeup. I could factually answer that without indoctrinating with any opinion.
But it's in no way scientific, your answer to that question.
How is that not scientific?
I would say maybe cultural, or it's a perception or an opinion, but it's in no way scientific.
Anyone else? I am a chatty person, so I'm going to take a pause and I'm going to let's see if anyone else has something to say.
So I just had one question for you, because not all homes are welcoming or open to conversation or safe. So how do we balance that?
I think that what we're saying is that there are certain conversations that are not to be had with a teacher. And I think that the argument that a lot of people on the right...
Facts. Because as a parent, yes, I'll be pissed if you're talking to my child about something that I have not talked to my child about yet, and you're trying to give them all the understanding from your point of view without taking in the parent's point of view. That's rough. Shout out to all my teachers, man. Shout out to all my teachers, because I was actually close to a lot of my teachers. Like, I had a real good bond. I was a good kid. I was a good student. So, but I never knew too much about their personal life. Maybe a little bit, but that's just because I knew who people were connected to other people. So I knew them in another way. Like I might have known their son, or I might have known like a nephew of theirs. So I kind of knew somebody in their family. But for the most part, my teachers just showed love, educated us, and left it at that. And when it was trying to be funny, we'll hear some funny jokes about something about their life.
And conservatives are making is that we just don't feel as if actors of the state should be having conversations that are taxpayer funding conversations with children about conversations that have not come up in their own households. And to that point, if you can't talk about God in the classroom, why can we talk about every gender under the sun, right? I think that's the conundrum that we find ourselves in. If we are banning those conversations, we've banned those a long time ago, then how can we have these conversations just because they belong to a different side of the political aisle?
So I think we actually talk about God in the classroom all the time, right?
Yeah.
Who's taught religion? Who's taught world religions? Who's taught like history in the way that, Puritans, and that's okay, because God is part of the fabric of history and whatever else.
We talk about it from a development perspective. This is how Christianity originated. This is how Islam originated. We don't talk about like, this is what this gender is, and this is if you feel this way, then there's gender affirmation therapy, all those things.
I think you actually bring up a really good parallel of like, I feel comfortable and I feel like it is okay to talk about identity issues the same way we talk about God. Not indoctrinating anyone, not telling this is what you have to be or you have to believe, but saying this is something that some people believe.
But in the sense of gender identity, I don't see that parallel. How is that making someone more literate, more successful?
What I hear you saying is that learning about different gender identities does not make somebody a more considerate, well-rounded person, but learning about different religions does make you a more considerate, well-rounded.
I'm saying that is a part of history. I don't understand where gender identity falls within what we should be teaching.
Religious history and God comes into play in terms of history, cool. But don't gay people and trans people too? It's not like I'm the first transgender person to ever walk this earth. Like there are trans people that were, and gay people who were part of major movements in this country, like from the civil rights movement.
there can be a whole class on this. There could be a whole class on this. You know what I'm saying? If I'm not mistaken, they're turning some of this stuff into courses. And if they are, they're going to start. If they aren't doing it right now, they're going to start. For the people that want to educate themselves on it. Let's just not be extra and try to exclude everybody and just
movement to the feminist movement to, I mean, obviously Stonewall, like, isn't that part of history too?
Let's just take a step back. So just show of hands. Who here thinks public school is the best option for kids? Okay. And who thinks private school is the best option for kids? Who thinks homeschool is the best option for kids? And then some of you guys didn't raise your hands at all.
It's so challenging to pick one right answer for that, because essentially what you're asking is, who do you trust the most with your children? Who do you trust to give them the cultural values that I have, and then fill in the gaps where I don't necessarily know the answer, but I trust that they're experts and are going to give my children the attention that they need in order to develop so that they can be a better version of themselves.
If I had to choose one, it's public school. It is the best tool we have to give everybody a chance at a good education, no matter where you come from, how much money you have. Public schools, where not everybody thinks the same and people are coming from all walks of life, is a good like microcosm of that global experience, where you can learn critical thinking skills and learn how to be a good community member, because not everybody looks like you or thinks like you.
Kali, you were shaking your head.
Oh, well, first of all, our schools are more segregated ever than our public schools, especially in blue states. New York and California have the most segregated schools. And on top of that, we are in a place where our public schools are not safe, especially the last 20 years. And I just don't see why sending our kids to these environments where it's unsafe. We also used to be, because I used to be on the left, we used to be against the institutionalization of our children. These kids are being institutionalized, having these places where there's 2,000, 3,000 kids. I'm okay with public school, but the problem with it is that it's become an environment where it's almost like the school to prison pipeline. We used to talk about that in the 90s. We're not talking about that anymore. And I think that's something that parents need to wake up about, and America needs to wake up about, the institutionalization.
I didn't even think about that. The crazy thing is, out here, they have one of the biggest high schools I have ever seen. Like, and they're like they're doing some reconstruction on the building, but it holds like, I don't even know, like what's the average, like what is even the average high school size? It says the average high school has about 850 students. I wonder how true that is. Let's see, it goes by state. It says national average for 2023 is 514. Georgia 751. Montana 106. You can go by towns and countries. This school, I feel like it holds like, I think they said like 3,000, 4,000 maybe. I'm talking about massive numbers of students, and like it's hard to keep control of all of that. Like, cause even at my daughter's middle school, like they be having, I hear about fights every day. Like, it's just not enough staff to keep up with all these kids.
Of our children.
So I talk about school to prison pipeline all day, every day. And I hear what you're saying, that it's terrible that there are parents who are sending their kids to schools that are not safe. However, what about the parents that don't have a choice? Like, I'm thinking about like the most marginalized community when I
Absolutely.
said public schools here, because I agree with you. The public schools have a lot of work to do to become the safe places where our kids are not in institutions where they're ignored or not given the services they need. And also, for the people that don't have a choice and that is the only option their kids have, I just believe that's worth fighting for. That's why I said public
Absolutely.
schools.
I'm a big advocate for school choice.
Well, why don't we just
Yeah.
show of hands? Who believes in school choice?
Can you just specify like what do you mean
So
by that?
that's where parents can apply the money that they pay to taxes. They get vouchers and they can put that into any school that they want. It's very popular in red states right now. And a lot of blue states are against it, especially teachers unions are against it because it's taking money away from the
That's dope. You pay your taxes. You should be able to put the money in the school that you. Yeah. And of course, they wouldn't like it. Like you said, like she said, it'd be taken away from their. It'd be taken away from their finances. It'd be taken away from their dollar. Like, It's a good video.
public schools and creating more of a competitive market.
Right. That's why I wouldn't raise my hand.
Yeah.
I understand.
Sometimes with school choice, it gets a little bit tricky, right? I had my first class had the first day I had 25 students. By day 2, I had 19 because 6 parents switched out of the class because they saw me and they were like, there's no freaking way before I even got a word in.
As a parent, I would want to know, like, do you not?
That comes with the territory. Damn, that comes with the territory. Like, you got to bite that bullet. And that's the thing. Like, I remember when a lot of stuff was kept behind closed doors because of, like, professionalism. Like, this is me trying to be myself. So if you always talk about professionalism, I'm always trying to, professionalism can be looked at in a bunch of different ways, but as far as being a teacher, yes, you have to be a certain way. You know what I mean? And that's like when you get to a serious job, serious pay, you know what I mean? You have to present yourself a certain way, and your look has to be presentable. And like if parents have a say so, now their kid is gone. No, not happening. Like, you just gotta. That's tough, but you gotta bite that bullet. That's rough.
I think
he said what 20. He said 25 to 19. The parents saw the teacher and said, "Nah."
that is okay, or they're right to withdraw when they see you, because ultimately you're probably an excellent educator.
I appreciate that.
I have no doubt about that, but I think we get into muddy waters when we start trying to take that choice away from the parent.
Do I think that it is okay for a parent to see me and go, not around my kid? No, I don't think that's okay. I feel like that's really crossing the line because you are, for lack of better words, discriminating against me openly. That's like seeing a Black teacher and being like, there's no way. It is the same. It is the same.
It's
Not
still
quite.
the right of the parent to make that decision as to whether or not they want their
right of
child
the
to
parent.
learn from you.
Okay.
Like, it's still that parent's right. Like, you can disagree with their motivations, their motives, their ideas,
Would you
but
say
it is
that
still their child.
This started around school choice. Even if you want to decide on a different learning environment for your kid, the people that do not have the option to send their child to a different place, the bar should not be so low. And that's my concern with school choice, is that sometimes people think that if everyone flees to the suburbs, who is teaching in these schools where everyone has decided they don't want the tax dollars going to? And that's one of the big concerns. With funding of education being the way that it's set up, it essentially makes it so that the people that are stuck with these as their options don't end up with as good a school. And everyone deserves to have their kid go to a good school.
Well, if there's school choice, they won't be stuck with those options. They can have other options. That's the whole point of that. Also, it is the school district's job to appropriately use those budgets. Most of the budget in the schools aren't going to the teachers. We got cafeteria workers, janitors, all of these people that are getting paid.
It used to be 9 out of 10 people that were employees of schools and districts were teachers. Now it's 50-50.
Yes.
So there is some mismanagement of funds in this country. We actually fund our kids really well.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Too many administrators.
Just to go back a little bit to like when you guys were raising your hands about the different choices, you raised your hand for homeschooling. Can you talk us through like why do you think homeschooling is the best option?
If we look at the history of this country, a lot of people were homeschooled. A lot of our founders were homeschooled. Like they only went to school till 3rd grade, a lot of them. And I think what has happened is parents have decided that the government is going to do a better job at raising their children than themselves. We have also come to a place where school is taking up the majority of our day. And we have this mistrust of parents that they can't educate their own children. And I think that that's wrong. I think that a lot of parents, and if you look at homeschool data, like my friend Phil right here, he's got 7 kids and he's homeschooling them all. And actually homeschool kids are turning out really well.
I think you bring up a lot of very valid points, but I have to say, and I just want your opinion on this, I would never homeschool my own kids. And I want my kids to be smarter than me, than I ever was. How am I going to have a child that is smarter and does better than I do if I'm their only teacher?
You grow alongside your child.
Okay.
I think as a teacher, I feel like I've learned the most in my life as a teacher, like more so than in college. And, so parents becoming teachers is actually good for them as well.
Okay.
And then even in the public schools, a lot of teachers are relying on the lesson plans. But speaking from experience, I got to give the credit where it's due. My wife does the homeschooling, and I've watched that process of her learning alongside, to make sure when they ask these questions, I'm getting knowledge on the material as well, so I can help you get through it. Nothing replaces that value, that bonding time that she gets to have with the kids.
And that's facts. That bonding time is like no other. And this is just a side note, to all the parents that, like they probably don't even think about homeschooling. Like they're mentally not even there. Like it's a positive for your kid to run to you to ask you a question about something and you give them the knowledge for it. Like that's you feeding their brain positivity, especially if you have an open mind about a lot of topics. That is so beneficial for your child. Cherish that if your child does that.
I taught high school for 6 years and I quit, and I'm a stay-at-home mom with my own kids. So we're a one-income family. We're lucky enough to be able to live off of my husband's salary. Would you say that most homeschool families have one parent working?
I do think the statistics show that is the case.
It's like the only way to do it well.
Pretty much. And another misconception though is that they think it's a matter of income and homeschool families have to be rich and et cetera. And I think the average homeschool family makes like $65K. So the reality is they're scaling back and making sacrifices for this lifestyle because they value what is coming out of it.
So let's just say that for the people that homeschool isn't an option, what is for so many people it's not. I do not think that school choice is the way to go about that, which I know is a lot of people's answer to that.
Can we just get Sean in here? What are your thoughts on this?
School choice gives people an exit ramp. You get to send your kid to a school that best fits what you think is best for their development. At the end of the day, it's kitchen table conversations about we've worked hard to raise a family. We want to spend our money in a way that best fits our child, best fits our family. And when you don't have school choice, you do make those trade-offs. There are real consequences there.
The school is considered one of those shared spaces, one of those last kind of shared spaces where you might bump into someone who maybe comes from a different background than you, has a different ideology than you. What do you lose if you homeschool and then you're not putting yourself in these kind of situations?
What you lose is negative influences. One of the biggest things I think when it comes to homeschool is keeping my kids away from your bad kids.
This is the short part.
And taking our children to pride parades. And you know what I mean? We've been there, we've been loving, and we showed support to the people there. But at the same time, we explain our views on the matter that we believe marriage is between a man and a woman. And from experience and talking to people, I understand that a lot of people who choose that lifestyle, it is based on trauma. A lot of were molested or sexually assaulted as children. So I don't think it's okay for me to teach to my children that this is something normal we ought to accept when it doesn't progress society. We would not be able to procreate if everybody were to choose that lifestyle. So I think it's okay for
All right. He went in. This is his opinion. You can't be mad. It's his opinion. Oh my gosh, this is opinion. Let's get our feelings out of it.
for me as a parent to say, hey, this exists, that exists, but this is our view on it, and this is how we want to present it to them.
Do you think it's somewhat problematic that you're going like, well, this is our viewpoint, that marriage is between a man and a woman because we can't move society forward with gay couples? Like, we have factually proven that incorrect. I can actually tell you that gay parents on average make exceptional parents and do exceptional things with kids because they adopt, and they only adopt kids when they are financially capable, which actually makes kids of gay parents actually more successful and academically competent. So gay parents actually are very good at moving society forward, and we have the statistics to prove
Could that be a long-term solution, though, if a large population chose to choose that lifestyle? There would be no children to
so first of all,
adopt.
no one is choosing this lifestyle.
That's an opinion.
Okay,
It's not an opinion. It's just.
though. Okay, sorry.
Bruh.
Did you choose to be straight, sir?
I've been teaching for 15 years.
So
and
have I.
will say that there is some kids now that are going for that community that are doing it not out of a genuine, and there's pockets of them too. Like, you'll notice like friend groups of girls that will all of a sudden decide that they're now trans.
The idea of LGBTQ being trending and the idea of teaching kids that being gay is a choice, those are two very
So
different
I'll answer that. Yes, I chose to be straight. Absolutely.
So
When?
you
So
could,
can you tell us about it?
so
Did
you
you
actually,
consider the
you
alternative?
could
Like-
be attracted to me if you wanted to be.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And let me explain. I have seen transgendered people who I thought were born female that were very attractive. I didn't know. Now, once I find out that that's not what you are, I am choosing not to pursue that. That's what I mean. So yes, you can be attracted to someone that is of another gender.
Let's talk about what do you think should be taught about gender identity in school? What do you think is being taught?
I want to go back to something you were saying earlier that's related to this about like you're seeing trends. And I am too, right? Last semester when I was teaching, I had a trans kid in every classroom. And I was like, whoa, when I started teaching,
It was one in school.
there was none,
Yeah,
right?
one
And
in
I'm like,
school,
this
yeah.
is wow.
And they
okay?
were really for it too.
And
they like went for it.
And I'm hearing you that is something I'm seeing too in the classrooms. Fair. Okay. Now, I'm not going to presume to be in the heads of those kids and to understand like what's real for them or whatever. But I will tell you this, historically speaking, a disproportionate number of kids who are gay, who are trans, who are any of the LGBTQI, fill in the letters, right? Didn't live to see adulthood. Maybe that's why we don't have an older generation of trans adults, because
I attended a funeral of a trans student last month.
a lot of them didn't make it. And so when I hear about kids like feeling comfortable enough to try expressing something where maybe they wouldn't be able to do in other spaces. And I understand that maybe that's not what you want for your kids, but I'm thinking about the most marginalized and vulnerable people. And unfortunately, statistically, for our queer youth, disproportionately, they fall in that category.
Mind you, with the whole concept of school choice, I'm all for parents who agree with what you're teaching, sending their children to you. I just think ultimately it should be within the parent to make that choice.
What do you think should be taught in sex ed?
I think it should be health education, yes. I taught middle school and high school, and they started giving it to my students in 7th grade. And I have students come back to me traumatized because I think sex ed has gone away from what it was. There are some lessons, like for example, they have a lesson where the kids in 3rd grade in the New Jersey curriculum, there's a picture of a woman's spread eagle, and they're learning all the different body parts of the clitoris and the stuff. Every child is different. Some are not developmentally ready for this or mature enough for it.
I grew up with abstinence education.
That's pretty rough.
Where we didn't talk about sex ed until middle school, but mostly 10th grade and high school. But I think that middle school is far too late to be talking about sex ed. And it's not because I think that 2nd graders are, wanting to be promiscuous, but like having sex ed scaffolded because it is a preventative measure against sexual assault, often being done in the home.
Just because that happens in the home doesn't mean that we need to label all parents as not capable of teaching sex to their children and giving it to
Of course not,
teachers.
but teachers for a lot of children are the only trusted adults, and it is incredibly dangerous to remove teachers who are trained professionals to deal with these crises in the home from the situation. And that's just like a funnel for child abuse.
I think a huge thing that's missing in education in the schools when it comes to sex ed is consent.
Yes.
You know, that's not being taught at all, to my understanding. I never learned it in schools. And that creates consequences when you look at the situations that are going on here.
I think that we have such a hypersexualized society. Obviously, kids are having sex younger. They're hooking up younger. It's just a reality. I would rather those individuals, and also from a pro-life perspective, know how to have safe sex and preventive sex that prevents pregnancies than them to just go around willy-nilly just doing whatever they want.
So there's a lot of middle schoolers in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that are getting pregnant at earlier ages. And we're starting to rank like the highest nationally in terms of middle school pregnancy.
She said Dallas is having high numbers in middle school pregnancies. It's like so many issues, like it's so many that it's like it's overwhelming to actually like talk about all of them in just one video, because it's like shout out to that interview I watched with Erica. Again, money talks. The parents that are able to are pulling their kids out of school. It ain't even money talks. It's it's knowledge talks. It's know-how. It's being able to sustain. You know what I mean? It's having the right structure. But I watched a couple interviews and she was talking about kids, you know, kids being bullied, kids being assaulted, the R word on the bus. I'm talking about what that was a little boy, and then had to turn around and get back on the school bus because there was no other way for him to get to school. Like it's getting ridiculous. If you can put down like a lot of the issues and the concerns that parents have, they could be eliminated if they knew how to do it themselves. If they took that step forward and actually wanted to educate their kids and understand what they need to learn to actually sustain themselves. But when you don't know that yourself and you're still learning it yourself, of course it's going to be an issue. Then you're subject to a trillion opinions of other people that are getting put into your child, the teachers and the students, faculty, staff, whatever else they see. Bad influences, like he said, and everything else. Sometimes they don't even get the education that they need because the school's so damn bad because the kid's not listening. So now the teacher got to deal with the kids that's not listening versus actually teaching the curriculum. Last time if I'm not mistaken, my kid didn't even have a book. You know how irritating that was for my child to come home and say, "Dad, like, do you remember?" You know, she was like, "Dad, do you remember Mean, Medium, and Mode?" And I was like, "A little bit." You know what I mean? I knew some. I remember some of them, but I couldn't remember all of them. And I was just like, you know, where's your book? Where are your notes? Oh, you know, we don't have any. Now, either my child is just not writing anything down, which probably is half the problem, but there's no book to actually go off of. I remember we had a book. So where's the curriculum coming from if there's no book to read off of? Even in college, I still had to buy books. Like, so where's the information coming from that they're feeding the kids or the replication of notes, so we can go back and refer to that's been an issue with me all year. And it's like they got these kids on these iPads, and it's killing me. And I'm like, I'm so close to telling them like there's no iPad getting, you're not taking an iPad, to like them saying, you know what I mean? Like they're trying to do everything through the iPad, but the kid's able to do everything on the iPad. My daughter be on YouTube on the iPad, like doing everything but the schoolwork. Like it's like I said, I'm getting to the point where I'm either deciding, like I said, private school is probably not going to be the way, but the family is situating itself to being able to homeschool. But yeah, it's looking real grim out here if you really don't know what you want to do. And I'm just getting my ducks in a row. like this is a no-go. Like I feel like California really has really good schools. I haven't been to every state, but California has really good schools. And I'm probably biased because that's where I grew up and that's where I went to school at. But yeah.
And that's because a lot of middle schoolers are, again, like you said, like getting sexually involved earlier, whatever
it's the Cardi B music.
Whatever it is, it's happening.
It's the Cardi B music.
And we need to be able to address it. And students need to be able to be equipped with the skills to understand how to have safe sex. If parents aren't having those conversations at home and middle schoolers are getting pregnant anyways, like why can we not include that in the school so they have some form of information?
Again, it just goes back to the fact that so many of this issue is just not black and white. It really is 50 Shades of Gray, because like there is just no one size fits all approach to the way we educate our children.
What age do you think sex ed should be taught in schools? Like starting at what age?
Probably at some point during secondary school, because if we're talking about it scientifically, kids need to understand that science is a body of knowledge that we're building together. This is what we currently understand about human anatomy.
As far as like actually getting into intercourse and the details of all of that, in my experience, I usually at least start giving that understanding around 7, 8 years old.
I think that sex ed.
That's useful information. 1 second. I gotta plug my charger up so I don't die on here. And this is from my phone. But I do have a comment to make. This video is actually pretty long. Man. Okay. But the understanding of the body, the chakra system, blockages. Check out my book, by the way, Inner Child Healing. You know, I briefly do talk about the chakra system and in ways it could be affected. But I think that understanding, and it definitely should be taught in school too. I don't know how simple the curriculum would be, but I would probably say starting in 6th grade, they should be able to pick up a course on the chakra system and understanding blockages and inner child healing. You know what I mean? Like, you know, let's get on that board train. So then we can teach. You know, the curriculum can be you know, overseen, you know, by the parents, of course, because it, you know, it's very specific. And it's only if, you know, if that's something that you care for your child to learn. But, you know, I mean, I definitely think that could be a thing. You know, I mean, let's get on that. You know, I definitely feel like I got to change a couple of my ways first. But as far as educating the minds of the youngsters, you know, I mean, I've been doing that. I stepped away to be a little bit more free with my mind, because it was a lot of stuff that was going crazy in there and I had to get it together, you know what I mean? So yeah. God is good.
Ed is a lifelong discussion, and it starts, I mean, as soon as you can communicate. Now, that doesn't mean that you are giving a high schooler's curriculum to a 3-year-old, but I'm already talking about consent and using proper anatomical language with my children, and that's where it begins and it ends in adulthood.
I think as long as it happens in a way such that, to the point you were making, that like kids are being protected, that's what I would say we prioritize.
I would say go back to the way it was when I was in elementary school. They separated the boys and the girls, and the girls watched a video about their period and all these things. The guys
That's health.
watched another video. Yeah, it was health class. And then we didn't talk about sex education, the actual contraception, all of those things until high school.
I think we need to separate.
Back when I was in elementary school, I think we got a crash course on it in elementary school. Of course, things was a little bit weird, but the education was definitely needed. So 5th grade is when I learned it. This was back in Long Beach, the elementary. I feel like they did good. Like he said, they separated us though, but we talked about everything. You know, condoms, you know, putting them on bananas, and it was like, you know, it was all in the video. She had, you know, went over the anatomy and stuff like that, but the boys and the girls were split. So I feel like that was a pretty decent way of doing it. You know, I feel like that was pretty good. But wait until high school. Oh no. I also knew people that were pregnant in middle school. So I think the education is needed. I want to, you know, I want to piggyback off of what he was saying though. But I think it would be dope to see the parents come in with the, you know, with the teacher or teachers or the staff and possibly teach it that way. You know what I mean? Because kids, they get this embarrassing feeling. So then if they can get all of that embarrassing feeling in front of the teachers and all the rest of the kids and the parents, I feel like it'll be a better like atmosphere of getting that information across and you know, actually putting in that information, and then the course can be, you know, I mean, split up the course. I mean, it can go deeper, and then, like I said, you can involve the parents in it, and then the kids, you know, like that's what I'm saying. So then you can set up real world examples. Like I remember we had home ed. I had to find a babysitter for my baby. I had a baby. I was a single father with a baby, and I had to find a babysitter while I went to PE, and I had to feed it and clothe it and change it, the diaper, and make sure I had a diaper bag. And like I said, I had to find a babysitter, and they cried. And I don't say it was for like a week. It was rough. And I was like, that was in middle school. And I think they been took that away, but that was something I had learned. You know, I learned how to sew, learn how to bake and from scratch, and a lot of stuff in home ed. This was back in middle school, like 6th, 7th grade. We were able to pick some of these courses up. I don't remember what my teacher's name was, but she taught us a lot. So they definitely need to bring some of these courses back. Like I said, yeah, and maybe incorporate the parents a lot more in some of these deeper courses when it comes to sex education. And then maybe we can start breaking some of these barriers. And of course, there's a level of healing that needs to be taking place when it comes to a lot of that. Because I know a lot of parents, you know what I mean, they may only have one parent show up. And then some parents may, you know, some kids may have 2 parents show up. So I know a lot of that, you know, definitely plays a part in the understanding of I guess what I'm saying is kind of extra, because now I'm thinking about it, it can go down a real bad rabbit hole, but of course it would, you know, it'll be communities. I'm saying this can definitely be an understanding in communities, like, you know what I mean, and break these courses down. Maybe not more so for a middle school course, but maybe in the homeschool communities, and getting this understanding, because we definitely have a lot more. We just have a lot more, you know, it's a lot of women with a lot of children, and, you know, their kids also need understanding and need people and souls not to bash them. That's why I said I definitely come from a non-judging standpoint. So when I think about things, I think about it from like 6 different perspectives, and sometimes all at the same time. And then my mind goes crazy, and then I just continue to talk.
Health education from sex education. Health education should be lifelong. No sex ed for now, the way it's being taught in a lot of these states.
Let's talk a little bit about other things that fall under the responsibility of what teachers do in the classrooms. What is CRT?
Critical race theory in reality is this complex legal institution that relates race to all of the institutions of America since its founding and since its birth. And it's something that I've never learned about in my classroom. I don't have any friends that have learned about it in their classrooms. It's something that's often taught on the graduate level or the undergraduate level. So I think that it's kind of not a great term to use in reference to conversations surrounding K-12 education, because it's not actually something that's even on the docket for consideration.
That was a perfect description. I could not have done a better description if I tried.
It is in our schools. I saw the lessons that contain critical race theory in California.
It said the words critical race.
It said the words critical race theory.
And
Yes.
she's not wrong.
Yeah.
She's not wrong, because
Yeah.
some states have implemented CRT into their curriculum. It means different things for different districts. So this is about to be a very complicated conversation.
So in my district, and this is in California, they're requiring a class called ethnic studies in order to graduate. And in the class, they were taught about critical race theory. They were taught the definition. They were taught to analyze school policy through critical race theory. And they were taught how critical race theory is beneficial to analyze the US. It's basically like this idea that every institution in America, every institution, that interaction that you have has some sort of element of race. And usually there's a hierarchy of oppressed versus oppressor. And there are kids in America in K through 12 that are being taught that. And I'm so tired of people saying that's not happening when it is. And then when I expose it, I'm being called racial slurs and names for exposing it. And I'm like, come on, guys. So I think we need to stop saying it's not being taught in America and change it to should it be taught in America? Because it is. There are teachers that are teaching this.
So there's a recent bill that was passed in Texas called Senate Bill 3, and it completely revamped Texas's curriculum standards and basically eliminated all requirements for teaching of history education in Texas that relate to diverse perspectives. So teachers can go through the entirety of K through 12 education without ever talking about slavery as an institution, even though it's thoroughly ingrained into just the history, just the basic facts of America's history.
My understanding, I don't see the banning of slavery being taught in
It's
Texas.
not the banning.
Yeah.
The issue is that it's no
'Cause
longer.
I know that bill.
It's no longer required.
I know
And
that bill, and I know it also states that you're not supposed to teach it in a way that causes mental anguish.
So it does not ban it. It doesn't ban the talking of the institution of slavery, but it does create a loophole for teachers to never touch on the topic at any point in a child's education. And that is something that is happening. And it's something that is happening to peers of mine. It is something that is happening predominantly in communities outside of, I guess.
And that's why it's so crucial for parents to be educating their kids on who they are and what went on. Grandparents, great grandparents, if you alive, telling those stories, watching those old films. Come on now, we can't have 90s kids talking about they never seen Menace to Society, bro. When I be seeing those videos, it be like, yeah, I mean, I guess I don't even know. I don't even know. It's just certain things for when you're black, or even if you like black people and you want to have a decent conversation about something random and funny, randomly just out of the blue. It's certain movies you gotta know. Menace to Society, Boys in the Hood, Car Wash, Snakes on a Plane. It's like a trillion. Oh, it's a bunch of them. But man.
Yes, my home city of Dallas, but having traveled and having talked to students across the state of Texas, I can confidently say that there are teachers who are not teaching very key facts of American history because critical race theory conversations have so clouded the teaching of history as an entire whole.
And it's not often called CRT anymore. It's called diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's called all of these different names and labels because of how divisive of a thing that it is. And I think at the end of the day, the big thing here is that let's teach Black history. No one on the right is saying, do not teach Black history, do not teach slavery. If we forget those lessons of the past, we're bound to repeat them. But what we're also saying is that stop being vindictive towards white people for being white. No one alive today was a slave, and no one alive today owns slaves. And so for white children to sit in a classroom and be blamed for sins that they themselves not commit is wrong. For Black people,
Yeah. I get that whole argument that they're saying. You know what I mean? Because I remember sitting in class after we learned certain stuff, and it's like I said, a lot of this starts at home because it's like I'm trying to teach my kid kindness, even though, you know what I mean, you got to teach a kid kindness, but then what? That's what I'm saying. There's beautiful souls in every color. That's what I'm saying. I'm very not. I be chilling. I be big chilling. You know what I mean? But you know what I mean. You know. I mean, I'm not wearing my shirt, but you know what I mean. It's black. It's black. It's black only. It's black. I say indigenous only. You feel me? Who your ancestors? You feel me? Because it's like we got to be able to teach what is going on and educate our kids so then the history is never gonna die. Because if you leave your kid in public school, like they literally just said it, it's a lot of history that's not being taught. But then in some perspectives, like he's saying, it's causing a very big rift, and sometimes it'd be bad. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. But some of these kids don't be mentally stable to be to be able to even take in some of this information, and that'd be the rough part.
For Black children to sit in a classroom and be told that because of the color of your skin, well, it doesn't matter how hard you try, you're really not going to go that far because the society hates you, and then you have all these structural barriers preventing your success. That is also wrong. That is not lessons of hope. That is not lessons of opportunity, and I think that is what schools should be about. You can't create the next generation of leaders if they are never capable of seeing themselves as leaders, right? And I think that is what CRT, unfortunately.
That's why you got to break it up. That's what my issue is. It's definitely a lot of courses that could be taught, and I'm saying it might take a minute for them to catch some steam and get moving along, but it's definitely vital for some of this information to be taught for the souls that want to learn it. And there are souls that are given that information now, and that's why sometimes school ain't the best option after high school. You know what I mean? After you get that GED or that high school diploma, you know what I mean? It's a lot that could be learned on the internet if you're looking for it. Just gotta look in the right places or have a little bit of dough.
In some ways, it does to young children of color.
What CRT means to me is obviously really different from what it means to you. And when you were saying before, kids are being anguished, I am not for kids feeling guilty about being born in the body they were born in. That's not what I taught.
What did you teach?
I mean, what did I teach? Well, for one thing, I taught about slavery. For another thing, I taught about the ripple effects of slavery that we're still feeling today. In no way saying that people of color are less than or can't be, or no, not the opposite. Saying people have persevered through things that I myself as a white person will never understand.
To really make this micro, the way I see it is there is no reason that kids of a certain age, right, because it's different teaching to a 6-year-old and teaching to a 17-year-old or in college, shouldn't learn about the history of slavery, the history of redlining, the history of Italians being lynched in this country, et cetera, looking at the facts and looking at some of the horrible things that have happened so we can learn from it. That is a totally different conversation than...
I didn't learn about sundown towns until I was last year. Yep. Yeah. There's a lot of places that we still have to stay away from. There's videos.
And when you've got instances like in Cupertino, California, where you have 7 and 8 year olds who are being sat down and said, okay, time to do a privilege exercise.
That's what happened in my
Let's write out, where you are on the power prism. Because that can create situations where students have warped views of themselves, especially if they're young. And I don't think it's appropriate because of the emotional impact it can have on folks.
If people are actually being sat down being like, if you're white, you're an oppressor and you're bad, that is not okay. That is not CRT. That is not critical race theory. And that is not culturally responsive teaching.
So it's not necessarily being blatantly said, but it's being implied over and over again.
Okay, there is definitely a way to teach CRT without it putting anybody down. But it's like, hey, just so y'all know, if you're interested, there's different types of racism. There's the idea of racism as you treat someone differently because they're a certain color. And yeah, you could be racist to a white person if you don't like them for being white. Now, there's also systemic racism because we took a whole bunch of slaves from another country and brought them over here. But with that said, right, there's different types of racism here. And you can expose yourself to different ones at different times, but you don't have to make anyone feel bad. You just say the statistics the way they are. You're not saying one person's good, one person's bad. You just go over the definitions.
How should we be teaching race?
Well, I don't think we should be teaching white privilege in the classroom.
But teaching about race, like if you're, designing your ideal, setting.
Yeah, I think.
How do you think race should be
Is
taught?
that because you think it doesn't exist, or because they can't handle it, or like
I think
what?
Again, when it comes to the privilege discussion, like that's a great conversation for you to have with your child. But I don't think that taxpayer-funded hatred should be something that we allow in our schools.
Okay, bro, real talk though, like brother to brother. Teaching white privilege does not inherently mean Black people are less. Factually incorrect, right? So
what is white privilege?
White privilege is the idea of white people may have benefits that fall in a societal structure. Because they are white, they have advantages, not such as, for example, if you send out a resume and you make one name a white name and the other name the classic.
What's a white name?
The white name was John, for example, right?
I know Black John.
Okay, no, hear me out. Let me finish, okay? We did a study. I didn't do this study, but we did a study where basically it was sent out 2 different resumes. They were the exact same.
Okay.
Right? One was given a classic white name. The other was given the name Jamal.
Okay.
The white name got 2 times more callbacks.
And
right?
I disagree.
This was true, though. This was true. I know exactly what he's talking about.
Agree with what you're saying.
But the idea of white privilege, right? The idea that somebody that is white may be.
I'm just saying it's true because I'm saying I've seen that article. I've read articles about this, and it happens quite often with men and women all across the board. Give your kid a Black sounding name, and we know what Black sounding names are. That's what I'm saying. I know what he means, but the example John was not a good example. But yes, Jamal to that's what I'm saying, maybe a Christopher. Like, I'm saying maybe that's not even a good example. But they used a couple examples of some really Black sounding names like Mercedes or something, or Hennessy. Like really crazy names, and you put them on a resume next to a regular sounding name, and it didn't like you said, the regular sounding name got 2 times, 3 times more job applications than the Black sounding name. I mean, it happens. We know that's gonna occur right now. So it's like, some of us cursed our kids with their name, and then they end up changing their name, and then they end up giving themselves a nickname, and that's what they put on their resume until they have to give their real name. Some kids do that. Try it out. If your mama gave you a crazy name,
have an advantage does not inherently mean you are teaching a Black individual they cannot accomplish great things. That is completely separate. So we're talking about fake biological science and social science. We're not even in the same building at school right now.
Well, again, in regards to these like audit studies about like what is a white name, it's not necessarily that the name itself is white. It's that the perceiver, the person that is reading the resumes, for some strange reason, feels like when they see a white name that they are on their team, or that there are positive stereotypes associated with people being white. That's what we're talking about when we talk about white privilege, is that, okay, if Oprah goes into a store, people might not assume that she can afford the things in that store because she's a Black woman, even though she is Oprah. But if someone was white and goes into the same store, some people, because of their own racial stereotypes, might believe that they can afford it. And so that's what we're talking about when we're talking about white privilege, just the sort of systemic benefits that you get from society.
No, I want to add though, what you're describing though is discrimination. But to call it privilege when the reality is, let's say you take the white person who would be considered white trash, you would get the same result from them. So I don't think you can necessarily assume that that's because of race, and definitely can't call it systemic because of personal decision to be discriminatory.
Should it be taught to our children?
Right. And
Should it be, and should we be telling Black kids that you're going to get discriminated against because of the color of your skin, with loans, with redlining, blah, blah, blah?
there is a way to teach culturally responsive teaching without being narrow-minded, but it's hard. But just because it's hard doesn't mean we shouldn't do it.
Even if you talk about the systems in place that privilege different groups at different times in different spaces, I'm not saying that when you teach CRT, when you teach about the history of this country that has privileged certain groups and not privileged Black people, I think it's important to acknowledge that Black people have persevered throughout that. There's so much excellence. And I think that you do all kids a disservice when you say, okay, the history of Black people in this country or the history of women in this country is that they were—
It can all be taught. It can all be taught. Somebody gonna figure it out.
oppressed the whole time and they weren't resisting. And then the Civil War happens and, the slaves are freed and the Black people just stopped resisting, economic injustice until the Civil Rights Movement. That is not the case of history in this country. And so I feel like it's very important if you're teaching about, race in this country, it's about resistance. It's about resistance to the power structure that suggests that some people deserve to get more.
Most people, especially the millennials, I'd probably say the people, but the generation before us already knew a lot. But a lot of people are leaving. You know what I mean? We're figuring out the world is too big, but it's a lot of people breaking generational curses and bringing wealth into their family and able to do things that they couldn't do before. And shout out to that. You know what I mean? That's what we're here for. In my mind, I have a contest going on with my dad. I've been a millionaire a couple of times. So, we out here trying to do it the legal way. You know what I mean? So, we push into the bag. Definitely just to brag on him because he always trying to flaunt his grandpa money. So, we gotta up one on him,
Or if they work hard, then another group of people, if they work the same level.
And not just resistance, but resilience.
You mentioned history, and a lot of you are educators. I'm just curious, what do you think should or shouldn't be taught, when it comes to U.S. history in the K through 12 environment?
So I think it's just this really unbalanced way that they're teaching it right now, especially the ones that are proponents of CRT, that's creating this narrative that it's all white people to blame when there was so many people involved in the transatlantic slave trade. The British were actually the ones that stopped it and used their own resources to stop the slave trading ships from continuing. They went to Africa to stop them. Hey, stop bringing them to the coast because we're not buying them anymore. And so this idea that I just feel bad for our children because they're not being taught it in a perspective that is holistic, basically.
And even to this day, there are slaves in Libya held captive by Black people. So this is not a white and Black issue. But even with that said, I think leaving the public school system, even my peers, when we talk about this, we left with the idea that Black history is slavery and Jim Crow. And we're rarely talking about the Reconstruction era, the amount of senators and politicians we had post-slavery. It was just so many things that we did after slavery that we're being told we can't do today somehow. That is just asinine.
There's no conservative in America who's saying don't teach slavery in the classrooms. But if you're going to talk about slavery, to his point, let's talk about Madam C.J. Walker. Let's talk about George Washington Carver. Let's talk about all these Black people who have done some really incredible things that, in spite of quote unquote systemic racism and all of these things, have achieved. Let's talk about Barack Obama. Let's talk about Kamala.
I was with him until that last name, but besides beside the point. It's hard, and I know this is a hell of a side note, but it's so hard. It's hard for them to want to talk about it and make a course about stuff and it actually get approved when we got to talk about how they were murdered. And the truth, and they're probably going to be so vague about it. And that's what I'm saying. But then if that course is actually real and raw, it's gonna make the indigenous people think. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, and now it's going, again, that's another rabbit hole.
Harris, why is every conversation that we have to have about Black people in the classroom about us being in chains, downtrodden, and having no hope? That's a problem. And Black History Month, it's American history. Let's talk about that too. Those are important, inspirational stories that are not taught in the classroom.
Do you think that the fight against CRT is hurting the efforts for more diversity and inclusion?
I don't want diversity and inclusion.
I mean, we already have that. What I mean by that is you said you want more Black stories of hope and success and all of that. That's what I mean.
But that's unfortunately not what CRT is.
Yeah. I know.
That's actually exactly what CRT is.
I think what's really clear is there's a lot of big opinions on education, across the spectrum, and really thankful to all of you for sharing, your perspectives, where you're coming from. Some of you said it wasn't like this when you were kids. 20 years ago, school was really different. And maybe you couldn't even imagine having some of these conversations. So just want to pose the question to you, and where do we go from here?
I believe that we have to recontextualize the way that we approach education as a society, and specifically how we've kind of started to use education as a political tool. At its core, education serves society. It needs to be a collaborative effort, because if education serves society, society should be investing in education.
We as adults have a lot of work to do, and it's both at kitchen tables and school boards and forums like this. Obviously, literacy is a part of that, and I think there are other parts of that too. But the only way that we can move forward is if, instead of just talking about what do we talk to kids about, I think we have to first get better about how do we talk to each other about this.
I think we have to recenter education about actually preparing young people for the real world and acknowledging the fact that we're not going to have a one-size-fits-all approach that works for every student across America. We have no room and no time, frankly, to teach all these divisive things, because we have urban literacy rates that are down in the dumps. When those kids learn how to read, then we can talk about gender theory, CRT. But until
we getting smacked in every other major category in schooling from every other major country. The big ones. Bad, science, math, reading comprehension. We are losing. Oh man. At least a couple of those, maybe not all of them. Yeah, we're doing pretty bad. Nonetheless, we're doing bad. America is doing horrible.
Until we have children who are proficient and above a third grade reading level, and a majority of those kids in cities like Chicago and Detroit, we don't need to be even having a conversation about whether or not students should be learning about privilege in schools.
The number one policy thing that I come back to that we must do to improve K through 12 education is to put in school choice at a universal level. It's far too overdue. It will incentivize the public schools to fix a lot of the problems that they have. It'll put the power back into the parent to get their child an education that best meets their needs. And I do think that if we're going to build the best generation of young people, then we should start with teaching them tolerance, kindness, and active listening before we get into racial privilege theory, gender privilege theory, et cetera.
I think that it's so important to get back to critical thinking and understanding that the way that we raise the next generation is also, not necessarily staying fixed ourselves. I think you were saying that, your wife is learning with the kids. And if we continue to learn about, hey, how do we do this better for ourselves? How do we treat each other better? The more that we do that, the better that we will be able to collaborate with people we disagree with, the better that we'll be able to make a curriculum that actually does speak about the excellence that you're able to do if you, continue to challenge yourself and strive and push forward.
On this panel, a really huge set of diverse opinions. There wasn't really a bad guy. We all wanted the same thing at the end. We just had different ways to get there. So I just think the collaboration is really what I'm taking away, because you can collaborate with anyone.
I think we need to make sacrifices for our children's future. and prioritize them a bit more today. Aside from that, if you choose the public school route, I'm all for the collaborative effort, but what that needs to look like is parents showing up to the PTA meetings, showing up to the school board meetings, knowing and being inside the classroom and being actively involved, regardless of which route you take.
I think we put too much faith into the education of our children in public education when we should be doing more of that ourselves. And we need to make sure that we put more power into the parents and empower them to take control of their child's education.
We just need to stop burning down the house. I truly believe that we can save public ed if we stop arguing with each other and start pouring more resources and like really buckling down to save this thing that really in turn saves us as a society. We can do it. We just need to stop chasing all of these like boogeymans that we are just like kind of seeing in the media just to polarize everybody and make everybody so angry. Like we need to stop that and like save what we have, because what we have can be great and we need it.
Okay, I think that will do it for us. Thank you all so much for taking your time and for sharing your opinions.
And that wasn't a bad video at all. That wasn't bad. That was not bad. I thought it was going to be a little bit more spicy. Not that I like drama, but that portion that they had that I reacted to, it just made it seem like it was a lot more heated debate in that. And everybody kept it real calm and collected. And I appreciated that. It was a really, really, really good conversation. Now, like you said, there was a lot of different points of views and everybody really wants the same thing. You know what I'm saying? As long as we're not being so judgmental, you know what I'm saying? Like it's for the parents, they're going to do what they want to do, whatever views that they have. You know what I'm saying? As long as they heal, that, you know what I mean? That's all I care for. As long as you heal and you're not coming from some hurt place, that's it. You know what I mean? If you have some understanding, that's just how it is, cool. But definitely some people can really tell, and they can, depending on how you give it off, you know, it might feel like it's more hurt than it is anything else. But some people are just vibrant in what they say, and they really mean what they say, and they're saying fuck off. So, you know, no big deal, but good reaction. Damn, that was a long video. It was only 40 minutes, but I guess I talked a little bit because now we got like a minute, an hour 25. But much love. Come to you with another video. Like I said, it's the vibe reaction of what is being taught to our children. Public school, private school, homeschool mix. You know, leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think of the video. I'll leave the description. I mean, I'll leave my book in the description, you know, so you can cop that and see what that's about. It's about inner child healing. Like I said, I got some chakra breakdowns towards the end, and some but mainly inner child healing, how to better yourself as an adult, so then you can better parent your children. You know what I mean? Check out that 35 pager. Let me know what you think. You feel me? Catch y'all soon. Much love. I'm out.